Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Italian Spotlight. Joining me today is Marco Carducci, who is a goalkeeper with Cavalry FC. Buongiorno, and thanks for joining us, Marco.
Hi, Mario. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're taping this. It's June and it's Italian Heritage Month in Canada. Let's talk about your Italian heritage, Marco. Fill us in on that.
Of course, yeah, no, it's a big part of my identity and my life. I was born and raised here in Canada, but I come from a fully Italian family. Both sets of my grandparents are Italian. So grew up with my nonni and was so fortunate to have that close connection to the culture. So my mom's side, they're Calabrese. Lots of Italian Canadians come from the south. So I have the Calabrese on one side, and then my dad's side are from the Lazio region, so just outside of Rome. So I get a nice little mix of two different cultures of Italy, but also, like I said, having that on both sides, growing up in an Italian family, all those beautiful parts of the culture, the food, the again having that connection to where my grandparents came from is really special to me.
Have you visited where your grandparents came from?
I have, yeah. I haven't actually been able to go down to Calabria yet. I've been to Italy a couple times, but I've been to Rome and to the town we're from, which is called Setse. So really special to it's been a while now. I have to go back, but special to go see the villages, the places where my grandparents came from, even where my dad spent a lot of time growing up. So
Yeah.
nice to have that connection.
So tell me just growing up, a typical Italian family household.
Exactly. I mean, so I grew up, I have one older brother. But again, having the grandparents, my nonna and nonno living so close, for example, and literally like a 1 minute walk away,
Yeah.
which basically meant my nonna raised my brother and I, right? She was always there for us, especially as my parents were working and, with young kids. So yeah, exactly what you can imagine, right? Being spoiled as a young Italian boy. I'm still spoiled to this day. I won't deny that. But obviously, having the garden, the food, the wine in the basement, the cold room with the salsiccia hanging from the
Yeah.
from the from the ceiling, right? So it's all these beautiful parts of my grandparents' culture and us being able to live in that. But more so than that, Mario, it's the importance of family and the values that comes with, right? And I'm very fortunate to have a lot of the immediate family here, so cousins, my Zia and Zio on both sides, right? Um, the stereotypical big Italian family,
Yeah.
but you have that connection with so many people, the cousins and everybody then, and that was something that we grew up with and still have today, which I'm really lucky to have.
Yeah. Now, do you speak Italian?
I don't. I've been taking lessons. It's important to me because I grew up listening to it.
Yeah.
So for example, my nonna and nonna were always speaking Italian. So I always heard a lot of the Calabrese dialect. I heard some of the the other side, the Setse, as we call it. So I was and as we know in Italy, you go 10 minutes up the road, it's basically a different language in terms of
Yep.
the way people speak, right? And so I grew up listening to it and can understand it quite well, but never learned it properly, as a kid and through my younger years, and I realized it's important to me to hold on to that. So I've been practicing more and more. I actually take lessons
Okay.
now. I've taken lessons at the Italian Cultural Center,
Yep.
um, which is wonderful to connect again with the culture, and it's something that I'm hoping to keep because, like I said, it's such an important part for me, and I just don't want that to.
Yeah.
I want to be able to pass it on as well.
Yeah. I chuckled when you mentioned the cantina because you see a lot of these little posts on social media about an Italian's war bunker or whatever, right? And it's
Yeah, yeah.
stocked with so much stuff. Do you still recall like the smell of walking into that cantina?
100%. And I'm actually very fortunate. So I still have one of my nonas living today, and she's still cooking all the time. She's
Yeah.
baking us stuff all the time. I was really fortunate to have, unfortunately, my nonna on my dad's side passed away recently. But having both of them, having the cantinas, having the jars of sauce, and the different varieties, right? Again, it was like the Calabrese style versus the style from Lazio. It was very different, right? The cooking and
Yeah.
so again, super spoiled. But you go down in the basement and you can smell the bread, you
Oh,
can smell the sweets, you can smell. Yeah, I remember my nono when he was still alive was making wine in the basement and in the garage. So 100%, and I'm very fortunate to be able to go and my nonna will say, what do you need? What do you want?
yeah.
I'll make it. Or go downstairs. There's sauce. There's this. There's that. Right? And you get to go and just again, very spoiled, but have that. It's really lovely.
Speaking of wine, when's the first time you sipped wine? Outside of
Yeah.
being a baby, because I know what my father and my children's baptism, they always wanted he wanted to give them
A,
a
a
little
little taster.
a
Yeah.
taste. When do you recall that?
I don't actually. I'm sure maybe when I was a kid, probably had the same experience. One of my uncles or something maybe slid some to me under the table. But it's funny you mentioned Mario because I have really great memories of drinking my nonno's wine when I was, at least of age or
Yeah,
close to being of age.
yeah,
But
yeah,
because it's the homemade stuff and he loved it so strong. It was very dry, and I was like, I don't like this at all. Little, you build a taste for it, and obviously you appreciate it more and more. But I remember my first few tastes of wine were like, this stuff is, wow, it's something. But I love it so much more now, like the homemade stuff, the drier stuff, because it just, of
yeah.
course, again, is a bit more of an acquired taste. But yeah, I'm sure when I was a kid, I had a sip or two here or there, and probably was like, what am I drinking? But
You know,
uh,
one of my good friends is Tony Spallatini, right at the
yeah.
Spalombos, and I remember him talking to me about growing up as a kid in Italian and feeling a little different just with a lot of the stuff that was happening, like including lunches like that you brought to school. Did you feel that way?
I think it's so funny you say that. I know Tony as well, and I love that story because I know that's something shared for a lot of people of that generation. You go to school with a mortadella and provolone sandwich, and people are saying, what is this, right?
Yeah,
And I think it was a bit different for me growing up because, at that point, when my mom was making lunches, it was we still absolutely had that too, but it was maybe less abnormal, I guess, compared to everybody else. I think it was more like,
yeah,
oh, I think people were jealous when they saw the nice prosciutto or salami in
yeah.
my sandwiches or in the homemade bread, for example. So absolutely was a bit different. But I think one of the really nice things, and again, I'm so fortunate that I had this growing up and still have it, is that it just is so normal to me, right? Going and eating, we have the homemade sausage and like that's just become a part of my life where I'm like I'm so proud to be able to be like yeah we have these close ties to the culture. So yeah, when I was a kid going to school, I had provolone instead of a little cheese stick, for example, right? And I just thought, oh, I'm lucky, I'm eating good.
Yeah. So speaking of eating good, what's your favorite Italian food? I know
So
it's tough. There's so
it's a
much.
tough question. And my diplomatic answer is anything that comes from my Nona's kitchen because it is. But I will say, my mom's side, the Calabrese side, my Nonna makes a take on a minestrone. We call it minestra. So
Hmm.
it's basically a vegetable stew.
Yeah.
And during that time, especially in the South, a poorer part of the country, there wasn't a lot of access to meat, even just like having beef regularly or pork was tough. So the cuisine is actually very vegetable heavy, right? There's a lot of pasta fagioli, pasta pizzili, so
Mm.
beans, peas, and
Yeah, yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of people don't really I think a lot of people assume meatballs or the classic kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
North Americanized Italian, and that's not really true. Again, there's a big emphasis on vegetables. And anyway, to bring this all around, my nonna makes this lovely, again, this take on a minestrone that
Mm.
is just the vegetable stew. It's so flavorful. She knows it's one of my favorites, so
Uh-huh.
she makes it all the time. And the best thing about it, Mario, is that it can always vary a little bit. So you don't make it the exact same every time. So sometimes there's more potatoes, sometimes there's more. It depends on what's growing in the garden, right? There could be
Oh,
more
yeah,
peas.
yeah, yeah,
There could be the fava beans from the garden.
yeah,
Sometimes you can add pasta to thicken it up or rice, and it just is. It's A, very healthy,
yeah,
and B, it's the
yeah.
thing that tastes the most like home for me, and that's why I love it so much.
Okay, now, uh, being a professional soccer player, how important was soccer growing up in your family?
The second I was walking, I think I had a ball at my feet too. It's something that was passed on from, both my parents loved the game, loved the sport, and played it themselves. But especially for my dad, of course, super passionate about soccer, and he's the one who passed it on. So
Yeah,
because he's from the Lazio area, we're Lazio fans. So in Rome, there's Lazio Roma.
yeah,
We're Lazio fans. That was passed on from my nono to my dad, now to
yeah.
my brother and I. Um, Same thing. I was a baby. I had a Lazio jersey on. So it was just,
Oh,
you could call it brainwashing. It's in the blood, right? It's in the family. It just gets
oh,
passed down right away. So soccer has always been something, watching it on TV when I was a kid,
oh,
playing it in the backyard, playing with my older brother. I started just like most kids, the Timbits, playing out in the
yeah,
local community
yeah, yeah, yeah.
association. Big part of my life, big part of my family's life ever since, again, the second I was walking, I was kicking a ball. So big
Yeah.
part, and something we all share.
Do you re do you recall your first first time you're wa really watching and following the World Cup?
Yeah, it's a good question. A big World Cup for me, and the one that was really pivotal, based on the time was, and I was very lucky, was 2006. So I was born in 1996. So I was just about 10 years old when this World Cup happened. And that's when Italy won the World Cup most recently. And I have memories before. I remember for example, the 2004 Euros. I had the posters on the wall, so I was paying attention, but I was young. But the summer of 2006, watching Italy win the World Cup in Germany, watching the likes of Buffon, I'm a goalkeeper, so I saw this
Oh,
this
yeah.
this team, this powerhouse team with all these players in their prime. Um, that's so tournament for me, and watching Italy play in that World Cup and being so connected in it, that for me, Mario was like a very central soccer memory for me, and to this day it brings back really good memories.
So I'm curious about what your household was like during Italian games for the World Cup, because I know, like, my father, you could hear him like blocks away, right? And then and I remember one year, like, where a former place where I used to live, and just the neighbors were, yeah, you just hear the noise, and it's
Oh yeah,
was it madness?
you know what's happening in the game just by hearing the reactions of the people
Yeah,
watching, right?
yeah, yeah.
No, it was exactly that. Again, my dad loves the game and is so passionate about it. The really special thing I remember about that World Cup, that one in particular, was because it was during the summer, watching with my brother, and him and I, he's just like me, is super passionate about the sport, and we were just so into it. And obviously, we took that from my dad and all of our family who were also just as passionate. But it's exactly what you're describing, right? Every moment was high stress. There's obviously a lot of passion for the sport and for the game, and watching, in the World Cup, for example, such high stakes.
Mm.
Every time I watch, it's funny, as a professional player myself, I'm less stressed when I'm on the field because, I'm in control. I'm playing. I have
Yeah,
some
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah.
control over what can happen. Whereas when you watch, it's a whole different beast, right? You're just like, you're so invested in it, and you can't do anything other than, hope for the best outcome. And
You,
yeah, the passion is there, just like how you described it.
we all have kind of bucket lists of stuff to, right? And
Mhm.
for me, that was always one that still remains. I'd love to see a World Cup game live, right? And
Yeah.
in person, or even to see one of the matches in Italy, right?
Oh yeah.
Like in the leagues, right? Have you ever gone to a stadium and watched a game? Or
I have. I've been to a couple,
yeah.
and I was really lucky. One of the times I was out there, I got to go watch Lazio, our team,
Oh wow.
play at home, and it was just such a cool experience, right? It just the atmosphere. Again, this is quite a few years ago now, so I got to make my way back to go watch again. But I also got to see AC Milan play.
Oh
I was on a different trip, and so but you're in these stadiums that you watch on TV, and there's so much tradition and history, and
yeah.
it's a special moment, and especially as a soccer player, you get to see the game at the highest level. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of emotion and passion associated with soccer, and whether it's the European Cup or the World Cup.
Mhm.
Why do you think the Italians are so passionate for this sport?
Good question. It is like you said that it's a shared thing, right? Across the world, everywhere you go,
Yeah,
and you see how much the sport's growing here in Canada, which is really, really exciting and so
yeah,
cool to be involved in. Um, I think it's the people's game, right? And you think about what it takes to play soccer. I, growing up in here in Calgary, we'd go outside, and as long as it wasn't freezing cold, we'd get out on the field. And even when it was freezing cold, we'd do it. It
yeah,
took one soccer ball or something like that, and you make a net and you play. And it's so accessible like that. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And in Italy, of course, there's such a deep, history of the sport, and obviously you can think about the amazing teams and players that Italy has produced. And um, I think that's a shared thing across the world, which is why anywhere you go, any corner of this planet, people are watching the
yeah.
World Cup, or they're playing in the streets, in the fields, wherever it might be. And I think in Italy, it's just um, it's our game in a lot of ways, right? I know the Italians, have had a lot of success in a variety of sports, but I think nothing compares to the passion for soccer, and
No.
that's why nothing really draws people in the way soccer does.
Yeah, super then. Well, thanks so much, Marco, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mario. It was a pleasure to chat, and obviously, really nice to speak about this, our culture, our heritage, and I'm a proud Italian, so thank you for having me on.
That's two of us. All right, super. That was Marco Carducci, who is a goalkeeper with Cavalry FC. I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Italian Spotlight. Thanks for joining us today.